Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of Hamilton Icons. I am your host and local real estate agent, Justin Little. This week, I am sitting down with the incredible Barry Vincent from Built by Barry. Barry, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I feel,
Cool space you got here.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, Remax put this in. I was always hesitant to use it because honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the backdrop and some of the stuff that they have on here, but I guess I could always buy stuff to
Put whatever you want there.
I know. I feel like we have so many overlapping things. It's actually crazy to me that we don't know each other more because you do still have your show on Cable 14 too.
It's rolling actually, and I always forget that it's there. I was actually scrolling through the channels the other day, and it happened to be on.
Yeah.
And I hate watching myself, but it was on, so I tuned in for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like that too. So we both got the show, right? And then I find with my show, I hated watching it too because you're forced to kind of not pick yourself. I think you'll naturally pick yourself apart. But I do it because I'm like, oh, I have to watch it because I have to make sure if I'm doing something weird or like some weird habit, I stop doing it, which I've noticed. I have like weird tics. I used to ask a question and then I assumed the camera would switch right away. So I'd be like rubbing my nose or like rubbing my eye. And I was like, okay, I got to stop that. I had to smarten up a bit with that. But yeah, so you have the Cable 14. And then we have some overlapping, I guess, wrestling. Did you ever wrestle in a match?
Not like anytime recently. It was probably like in my early 20s when I was doing wrestling, and I'm almost 40 now, so it was like a long time ago that I got into wrestling. I mean, I'm still like I guess a closet wrestling fan, or a mark as they would call us, but yeah, it's been a while. And then I went and did a class at Rip's school maybe 5 years ago, just like I just really wanted to get like run the ropes and stuff. And he's like, yeah, come out to a class and stuff. Went to his little like car wash warehouse there.
Yeah.
The hidden. I love it. I know he's moved. I think he's moved to a new space now, but I loved that.
Yeah. I helped him find that new space. I remember it was actually one of the coolest transactions I ever did because looking for that space, obviously it's something that means a little bit more to me than, we do so many houses too, that it's nice to change it up a bit. And so when he found the space with the 2 rings, I was like, he's got 2 rings in there now.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's like the performance center now. Got a couple of rings but yeah, you're right. That old car wash, like you could see the outside through the wall. And yeah, going back and bumping, you don't realize when you're doing it every day, like when you're training, you get used to it.
Yeah.
But then when I went back because I was thinking, like we were talking about the Germania Hall and how it gets packed now, right? I was going back and thinking, oh, maybe I'll do one more match. So same thing. I reached out to him and he's like, yeah, come by and bump around. And I was like, after that, I was like, oh man, how did I used to do this?
Yeah.
Like everything, your back is so tensed up. It just hurts. You don't get used to it, right?
Repetitions to get conditioned to it. I don't even really remember what all that feels like. It's hard, like cardio though, running the ropes and just like repeatedly doing all that stuff. It gets you.
Yeah, for sure. So explain a little bit about what like Built by Barry is, what you do.
So Built by Barry, I mean, actually, if we were to technically call my business, is called Lift Personal Training in Benbrook, but everybody knows me as Built by Barry. That's my social media handle, and that's kind of what everybody follows. That's actually what some people call me. They're like, hey, Built by Barry. Like, but yeah, that's not my actual business name. It's called Lift Personal Training, is in Benbrook. So it's a combination of in-person personal training, online coaching. I do a little bit of group training at a gym in Hamilton, and that's pretty much like what my business is now, is a little bit of everything, just to kind of try and fit in. Like I enjoy every aspect of training in that way. I really like the one-on-one time with people. I really like helping people online, like from a distance. There's like, I find with online coaching, maybe there's a lot more touch points with people throughout the week. Whereas like with a one-on-one coach, it's kind of more so that hour that I see that person, or that 2 or 3 hours a week that I see that person, like that's our time together. Whereas if I'm coaching somebody online, we have multiple touch points throughout the week where we're keeping in contact about nutrition and all that stuff. And then with the group stuff, that's probably just what I enjoy the most. So I try to make sure that I have time for that throughout the week to train, groups of 8 to 10 people at a time, because I think that really brings out like the best of me as a coach. It gets me excited. That's like when my energy is the highest. I kind of feel like you have to be high energy when you're in a room of people like that, and you got to be alert and all that stuff. But I mean, as a business, doing a little bit of everything as far as the fitness side of things go, and then a little bit of a side gig in comedy, I guess you could say. We can get into that as well.
Yeah, I want us to talk about the comedy after too, and focus because that's going to be fun. to talk about. But when it comes to the personal training, it's interesting you say online because of the multiple touch points, and I think that's kind of where we're moving now in terms of things. Is people like the one time a week almost isn't enough anymore. Especially there's so much information out there. Like when people are on Instagram, like you get so many different things. Being able to constantly be in touch with people, like you said about the nutrition, could be really big in helping with the results.
For sure. I mean, nutrition is a huge part of it. The majority of people who go to a trainer are, I mean, it just is that they are trying to lose weight. The majority of people who go looking for a trainer, I think it's safe to say, are probably trying to lose weight, and nutrition is a much bigger part of that than training. So nutrition has to be a part of it. If this person is coming to you to help them lose weight, then nutrition has to be part of the service that you offer. So, it's easier to deliver that help in an online space. I mean, you can talk to them when they're with you about nutrition if you're with them in person. I mean, I also should mention too that I have a service that I call hybrid. So I have clients that will come and see me once a week, or some of them that'll even come and see me just like once every 2 weeks. They're doing an in-person session with me, but then they're also doing the majority of their workouts online. So I'm delivering their workouts online through an app, keeping them accountable that way. They're able to track their progress through the app. And then they're either coming to me once a week or every other week for like a really intense workout session, or maybe to use some equipment that I have that they don't have at their gym. Or it might be as simple as they're coming to me just once a month in person so that I can show them their new workouts in person. So we call that like a hybrid service, kind of a combination of in-person and online coaching.
That's pretty good because I think when people do it online, you because even like I've done the F45, right? They do it on the screen, but you might think you're doing the movement right, but you could be doing it in a way that you're either going to hurt yourself or it's not completely right. So it's good that you have that hybrid option for people to come in and
Yep,
learn how to do those movements, right?
for sure.
Um, I imagine the dieting is probably the biggest portion that you run into. Like, do you find that you have a harder issue getting people to do the workouts or getting people to stick to the diets?
The workouts for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Sorry. Nutrition is the harder part to get people to stick to. Sorry, I guess I misunderstood the question, but yeah, getting people to adhere to like the nutrition recommendations that you give them and help and kind of getting past a lot. Can we swear?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Like a lot of the bullshit, right? There's so much bullshit, and there's new types of bullshit all the time, and people sell these things as shortcuts, and so everybody is kind of just like waiting around for this shortcut to come.
Mhm.
But what works is the same thing that's always worked, right? Is kind of managing your overall calorie intake, making sure that you're getting enough protein, fruits, vegetables. So you got to keep people adherent to that and make sure that they're not like bringing in all this noise about carnivore, or people saying that vegetables are bad, or that you should completely eliminate carbs, or that diet coke is worse for you than regular coke, which is just like an insane thing to say to me. Like, I can't believe that people actually tell people that you would be worse off drinking a beverage that has no calories than a beverage that has like 150 calories of just pure sugar. So cutting through the bullshit and making sure that, because I used to struggle with this a lot, rather than just like bashing something that you don't believe in, also explaining to the person like the right way, or why what you're saying is bullshit is actually bullshit, rather than just, bashing things,
Yeah.
right? Like I used to bash F45, for example. I don't do that as much anymore because I think that like any type of movement is better than no movement. I still think that like a more structured approach to resistance training is the best thing for most people. Um, but if you're doing something and it's safe, then that's absolutely better than nothing. And most of the time, if somebody is doing something that they enjoy, like take yoga, for example, like a lot of people do yoga. If I was to say like, yoga sucks, you should do strength training. If I say that to most people, they're not going to be like, you know what, Barry, you're right. I'm going to start strength training. They're going to be like, this guy's an asshole because he's saying that what I'm doing isn't good.
It's true.
You know what I mean? And you just kind of, you maybe could have formed a relationship with that person over time, but instead now they just think you're an asshole and they're just going to go off and keep doing their thing.
Do
Right.
their thing, yeah. Yeah, like, yeah, I guess you gotta be careful with how you go about that stuff. It's funny you brought up the carnivore because that's something that I'm hearing a lot about too. Like,
Yeah.
I see a lot of it. I went through a phase in the spring where I was eating predominantly just huge steaks,
Okay.
and, like, for dinner, I would have, like, 2 chicken breasts,
Yep.
right? And I was cutting down,
For sure.
but it's hard to do diets like that, like those fad diets, they're very, very difficult. I found then I switched to factor meals, which I know are a bit higher in sodium, I think.
Higher in sodium. Yep.
Yeah, but they're, the portion control because it's lower calories, you're getting like 600-ish calories per meal. It's like you said, about the Diet Coke, right? Like at the end of the day, your lower calorie intake, and if you're exerting more calories than you're taking in,
Mhm.
you're going to lose weight, right? Like,
Yep.
is that not how it works, the science? So I think that's a good approach to have.
I mean, like,
But
that's the underlying principle, right? And you even said, like, when you switch to carnivore, you're eating steaks, you're eating chicken. Um, I mean, when it comes to weight loss, at the end of the day, it's probably because you were eating less than you were before, when you started cutting out all these foods. And also, protein itself is you burn a lot more calories digesting protein. So your calorie output was a little bit higher that way. And things just kind of balanced out in a way that resulted in you losing weight. It's also possible that maybe you had some kind of nutrient intolerance, some kind of food intolerance that you weren't aware of, and so you went on carnivore, which is essentially an elimination diet. Whatever food that it was that was bothering you, you removed it without even really knowing
wow,
what it was, right?
I never even thought of that.
Because most people, like, it's very rare that somebody would have an intolerance to, like, beef. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's usually some kind of vegetable. People like the FODMAP diet, things like that, all those
Mhm.
foods that irritate people, right?
Yeah. I even like gluten stuff
Yeah.
too. A lot of people get affected by that, right? Um, so what made you like what was sort of your journey like getting to this point in your career, like when you decided to go into the personal training side? What did that journey look like from not doing it to becoming Built by Barry?
So I've been a personal trainer now for about 15 years. It was something that I got into a little bit later. I originally went to Mohawk College for broadcasting. So I graduated from broadcasting. It was around the time, like when I started going to college for broadcasting, that I started getting into fitness. Like when I left high school, I probably weighed anywhere from 40 to 50 pounds more than I do now. So it's probably like 230 pounds and like 185 now ish. So I really started getting into working out. I started losing weight. I had a couple really good buddies that would come to the gym with me. We would always go to the gym at the end of the day after work, after school. Um, I started to really lean out. I started to take an interest in, reading things like men's health magazines, like pulling workouts from there, doing them, actually following the workouts. And so with those friends, I kind of became the guy, like when we would go to the gym, they'd be like, "What are we doing today?" Like I was the guy who was coming up with the workouts and I was getting results from it. And not enjoying the work that I was doing in television. Like after I had graduated for broadcasting, I was doing all kinds of early call times in Toronto. Didn't really like that. Um, so one day, one of the trainers at the gym kind of put it in my ear, like, "Have you ever thought about being a personal trainer?" And that was when I really started thinking about it. Kind of around that time, I had also gotten out of the broadcasting jobs, taken on more of like a manual labor kind of job. And I think I maybe did that for about a year, and then I decided to go back to school. So I actually moved out to North Bay for 2 years to get it's called a strength and sports conditioning diploma at Canada College in North Bay. And before I even left school there, that was a really weird thing because I think I was like somewhere between like 20, it must have been like 25 or something like that. But I was like 7 years older than all the kids in my class. But I was like graduated at the top of my class. So it was like this weird thing to be the old guy there who was like the nerd of the class. But I started training a couple clients in North Bay before I even moved back. And then before I even moved back to Hamilton, I secured a job at what at the time was Premier Fitness. And then I guess the rest is kind of history. I mean, I started off training a lot of athletes. When I got into personal training, that was kind of what I had in mind, was training athletes. And I think that's what a lot of personal trainers think when they're going to get into personal training. But you find out very quickly that there's not a lot of money in that because sports are all seasonal.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So you can't train these people all year round. I've had the pleasure of training like some very, very good athletes, a lot of professional hockey players and things like that over the years. But at the end of the day, I think where my skills are best utilized is in just helping like the general population.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's an incredible story. When you talked about cutting out those magazine clippings, like that's something that I think a lot of people, that's what was like back in the day. Like 15 years ago, there
Yeah.
wasn't like now you can go like if you get that in your algorithm on social media,
Or
Instagram,
just
you're
popped
getting
out to
like
you. Yeah.
everything, right? But back then that was the only way. Sold a house recently to my friend and we were kind of laughing because the guy had a gym in the garage, but he had these old cutouts from magazine
Okay.
of the workouts. And
Yeah.
it was like the one was put on 15 pounds of muscles and 45 in muscle in 45 days.
Days.
And we were like, wow. So we were laughing about that. But um yeah, it's that's a pretty cool journey to go from broadcast. Where were you working in broadcast? Like were you at Cable 14 at all in that
No,
capacity or
I did 3 years at Mohawk, and then my internship was at MTV Canada, which doesn't exist anymore. So even that alone was like, I think I kind of started getting mentally out of it at that point because you're taking a GO train to Toronto every single day, like on your own dime. Like you're not getting paid anything for this internship. So that was very draining. And then, I mean, it was very good on a resume. It allowed me, I think my first job in broadcasting was like, "So you think you can dance Canada?" It's like a production assistant, which was like pretty cool to say, but again, just not like a very enjoyable job, right? Like just a grind of a job, like driving, getting coffees for people and things like that, and having to be in Toronto for 5 a.m. Um, yeah, so I just kind of fell out of it over time. So my first official paid job was "So You Think You Can Dance Canada," which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. You got a credit on the credits or no?
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. When it comes to your personal training, do you do it out of like a gym? I know you have the gym in your house. Is that so when you do a hybrid, would somebody come to sort of that facility that you have at your place, or do you like when you do a group one, where would you do something like that?
So all of my one-on-one training and like the hybrid stuff as well, I do out of my home, which is up in Binbrook. So I have like a full gym in my house, which is very cool as far as overhead costs are concerned. um,
Mm,
and then the group stuff I do at a place called the Hamlet Health Club, which is on Main Street, kind of like by the End Zone Bar and Grill in
mm.
Hamilton. There, it's a cool little studio. My buddy Justin Delimpio owns it. So he, I was doing. Do you know? There's an event that gets run every couple of months called Fuck Up Nights.
I don't think so.
So they bring in business owners to kind of tell their stories, tell about some of the things that they messed up in their business journey. And I was speaking at that event, and I've known Justin for a while, but he was there. And during my talk, I talked about how I used to do a lot of group trainings. This was how I had been doing my own thing now for a few years. So I wasn't doing any group training at the time, but I talked about how at a gym that I used to work at, I used to do like women's only group training, and it was great. It was awesome, and how much I missed it. And he had this space. So he messaged me shortly after that, and he was like, "Do you want to come and start running groups out of my gym?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, we can definitely give it a try." And I think that was in April of 2024. So it's been, I guess, 8 months or so, 8, 9 months that we've been running that now, and it's just constantly growing. It's kind of a unique program in that, like, I know there's a lot of other group fitness programs that kind of incorporate strength training and stuff, but we do it in a way that makes it a little bit more personal, in the way that everybody that does the program has that same app on their phone, like that I use to deliver programs. And so everybody that is in there, they're tracking the weights and the reps and the things that they're doing. So it's very personal that way, because I think a lot of group fitness programs are kind of just like, these are the exercises, they're on the whiteboard, they're on the TV, whatever, just go do
Mhm.
them. Nobody's really kind of tracking what they're doing. And I think that as far as actually getting the results out of strength training that you would want to get, as far as like getting stronger, being able to move more weight, building a little bit of muscle, you really need to be paying attention to how much weight you're moving and how many times you're doing it to ensure that you're making progress. Because sometimes the scale is not always going to say what you want it to say. So the more ways that you can watch yourself progress, the more motivating it's going to be, and the more accountable that you're going to be to the program.
That's a really good point, especially the scale aspect of it. Because until I started really get into exercise, you see changes in your body maybe in the mirror, but you don't see it on the scale and you're like, what the heck? I'm not losing weight. But then meanwhile, you've actually put on pounds of muscle, right? So even though you're not losing weight, I guess you're getting it back in a way that's more beneficial to you.
Yep.
And I think that's something a lot of people overlook. The tracking, that's a great point that you brought up with the group training, because a lot of group training, it is like, here's today's workout,
Yep.
go and do it. You don't necessarily have that accountability. And I'm a big guy on tracking, like even in my business, I track how many people I talk to in a day, like every morning. I'm
Yep.
very intentional about it. I think of it like a mental workout for my business. It would be like if I went to the gym, how many reps did I do? How many sets? It's like, okay,
Yep.
how many, first time buyers did I call today? How many, all that kind of stuff, right?
KPIs.
That's it. It's like you got to have, I think, whether it's your business or your personal life, if you
Yep.
want to grow, you can't improve on what you don't track,
Yeah.
right? So having that tracking in there is a huge bonus. You recently did a thing for charity, right? Like a group workout. I saw you
Yep.
post on Instagram. You raised money
So we
for,
raised about, it was actually my first time ever really doing, I mean, I did a couple like toy drive boot camps at a gym that I worked at previously, but this was my first time ever really like putting something together myself. So we did a charity boot camp for Friends with Hearts, which is a charity run by my buddy Jay Perry. Basically, they take all the money that they collect, they go out, buy all the toys, and then I believe they donate them through the Good Shepherd. So we raised about $800 for that. So I was pretty proud of that. We had a lot of local businesses donate some pretty awesome prizes. It was a lot of fun. We packed the gym up, so looking forward to keeping that going in the years forward. I'd like to do stuff like that a couple times a year. I mean, I think it's obviously very good to give back, but certainly doesn't hurt your business to do things like that, right? And get a lot of people in the door, and it's a good time. It's fun.
Yeah, that's another Jay Perry, another connection.
Yeah.
I feel like
Everybody knows Jay Perry
I don't
though.
know.
Can't
Yeah,
point
okay, so you gotta eliminate him from
Yeah.
the connection list. And so what sort of challenges do you see in your business right now, like with the personal training?
Right
What's
now?
one of the biggest challenges right now for you?
I mean, December's always like, if there is slower months, like December would be one of them. It's kind of like that ramp down. Um,
You don't have any early go-getters for the new year being like, let's go, let's get in shape.
I mean, for me, like I'm fortunate that I've had clients. I have some clients that I've had for almost 10 years, right? So like my schedule is always decent. And I've still got the group stuff going. So I keep myself fairly busy, and I also really enjoy making content. So that's something that I do in my downtime. And it's just this general understanding that December is a slow month. So if you can use that to get ready for what's ahead, because as much as maybe I tell myself every year January might be slow this year, it never, ever, ever is. Like there's always that January rush when it comes to fitness.
Yeah.
Always people reaching out. Always. Um, so yeah, December is a slower month, and then maybe sometimes in the summer. So just kind of struggling. If there was a time to struggle, it would be through the slower months, tax time.
Tax time. Oh my God.
I
Yeah.
think any business owner can relate to, that's just, I would say that's just the most stressful part of being a business owner, is like dealing with taxes.
So I have,
Especially if you're not like, I'm not a numbers guy at all. Like the inner workings of my business are not complicated. Um, I will say that everything is very simple. So yeah, that's probably the most, it's not a tough time for my business, but it is the most stressful time of year for me too, is like those months around like tax time and getting all that information together. Cause I'm a very last minute guy when it comes to that. I'm not like you. I'm not with the data.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
I had to become somebody like that with my taxes because I was somebody that was like, man, I didn't track anything. I actually
Yeah.
didn't even know if I was making money. Like I had no idea. I was so reckless about it. It wasn't
Yeah.
until a few years ago I got really, really into it and then started like putting in business practices of, how much I should be spending on marketing, operations,
Yeah.
salaries, that type of thing. And then that helped change it. And then recently, actually, right now, I'm going through an audit from 2021 on advertising expenses. So thankfully, I had my stuff in order in 2021 because I have all my invoices and
Yeah.
receipts that they're asking for and stuff. But still, it's a pain in the butt to go through it, right? Yeah, taxes are always stressful. And then if they come knocking, you're like, oh crap, this is going to be a. So that's a bit of my December. And so that's interesting. You said that um, your work, like January, you always underestimate or think it might not be busy. I thought that was something, but I guess it makes sense. 'Cause I thought it would be some of kind of exclusive to my industry. Like I finished my year and I think, okay, I did this much business. How am I going to do this again next year? Right. But I guess with you guys, because you get that big wave in January, it is pretty cyclical like that.
For sure. And then, out of that, a bunch of people who reach out, some of them stick with you long term, some of them fall off. And then just kind of repeat the cycle. But again, I've always had like kind of that base of clients. Like I think I have 2 clients now that are with me now, but have been with me at like the 2 previous gyms that I worked at.
Nice.
So you like stick with those people, and those are just really good relationships to have. And um, yeah, I'm just fortunate, I think, in some situations with some of the clients that I have that I've been with for a while. They're pretty prominent, like business owners and things like that. And you kind of sometimes, you try not to, but you can take for granted the fact that you're pretty lucky to like have 1 or 2 hours a week that you actually get to spend and talk to these people, because they probably don't have a lot of people in their life that can say the same thing.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So you got to make sure that you don't get complacent with those things. And try to understand. I mean, I've completely changed topic at this point.
No, that's okay.
But some people, at the end of the day, when it comes to being a personal trainer, like some people have been looking forward to their workout all day. And if you're a personal trainer, there's a pretty good chance that you've been working all day at that point. And so you might be tired or something like that, but you have to remember that this person has been looking forward to coming to see you all day. So whether you're tired or not, they're still paying the same amount of money as every other person that you've seen that day. So you kind of got to be on your game. So I try to remind myself of that as often as I can. Sometimes I forget, especially as a parent. It can be a little bit exhausting at times. Um, but yeah, you gotta show up, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess now would be a good time to kind of transition into the comedy thing a little bit. But I just try to remind myself is like, and I picked this up from a coach that I follow very closely. His name is Luca Hocevar. He's a personal trainer, like very prominent personal trainer. Does a lot of YouTube and stuff like that, but he always says, put on a show. It's like when you're coaching, right? Not like kind of like put on your coaching shoes or your coaching hat. You got to put on a show for those people, whether you're tired or not. Because it's the same thing. If I was going to go and do a comedy set, whether I've had a crazy long day and now I have to go and do this comedy set, I'm not just going to show up and go up on stage and be fucking tired. You know what I mean? I still, like, I know in my head, you know, that I have to wake up and do that. Sometimes it's hard to do that as a coach. It's never hard for me to do that as a call myself a comedian, amateur comedian or whatever. I've never have trouble turning it on. So that's one thing that I've kind of learned from comedy to carry over is like, you have to sometimes flip that switch. You can't just be like, I'm going to be a tired personal trainer. You have to like flip the switch and be on for the people who are coming to see you because they're paying a lot of money. And I think, and I can relate to this too. Like a lot of personal trainers, especially when you go to a gym like Good Life, people who are very new to being a personal trainer, they have nothing in their life that they invest as much money into as their clients invest into them. So they don't really understand like what you should expect from a service that you're paying 75, 80, 90, $100 an hour for. A lot of those trainers have nothing in their life that they're paying that much money for. So they don't really understand the kind of service that you would expect. If you're paying $100 an hour for something, you probably have pretty high expectations for the service that you're getting.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a really good point, right?
and I think
Especially
too,
somebody newer.
for sure. And I think too, like a lot of personal trainers, young ones can get complacent in that because there's this gap between what the client is paying and what the trainer is making. So the person or the client might be paying $80 an hour. The trainer is only getting $25 or $30 an hour. And so over time, and I've actually seen this happen in person, a personal trainer can think, well, that's not fair. You know, they get complacent in their job. They're not maybe delivering the service that they should for the amount of money that the client is actually investing. The client is still expecting an $80 an hour service, even though you're making 30. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just something that I think a lot of people don't think about when it comes to personal training in like a big box gym setting. And I actually watch it happen in person all the time when I'm at Good Life.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happen now that you're pointing it out, right? And I guess that's the difference between like you're doing your own thing, so you're an entrepreneur, so your whole business is focused around obviously you need to deliver that quality service, and it's not where I could definitely see somebody getting complacent if you're only making a certain amount of money, and then even maybe you start to feel like, oh, I got all these clients, I'm doing all this training. Maybe you start to feel like you're not even getting enough for what you're doing, and that can reflect in the service you're giving to the client for sure.
You can, but you'll like, and I certainly was guilty of this when I was personal training in a big box gym too. Like they're putting you in a gym with like unlimited opportunity for clients. Like if you were to be like, I'll just go open my own gym and do this on my own, like where are you going to get clients? Like
Yeah.
you're not going to walk into your own gym full of clients. Whereas right now, you get to walk into a Good Life that has 15,000 members. You know what I mean? And you're training this client in front of everybody, and all you're doing is like checking yourself out in the mirror. You're not recording anything that your client is doing. You're kind of just going through the motions. You know what I mean? You have like a crazy opportunity to build yourself a business and build yourself like a skill set of sales. And you can do all this on somebody else's time, kind of on somebody else's dollar too. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure, I mean, there wasn't much of this when I was a trainer, but I'm sure there's all kinds of training modules that they offer you and educational things that you can take advantage of. You know what I mean? Like there's a huge opportunity to, you know, maybe not build yourself a business, but certainly build yourself a skill set so that when you do decide to go and have your own business, that you're a lot more ready.
Yeah, and the skill set is huge, right? Especially, I mean, you could be the best personal trainer in the world and you could be somebody that gives somebody the greatest results. But if you don't know how to get people to tell that to
Yeah.
or how to show people, then it really doesn't matter, right? Like people don't really care what you know, I guess, until they know you sort of. Like you have to get it out there. You have to learn that sales skill set. And I think that's where a lot of people in business fall short is they have really good intentions
Yep.
and they want to do very well and they do try very hard. But if you don't know how to actually get to that acquisition, whereas I could see, you know, like
Yeah.
you said with the box store and the training module, I'm sure there's probably some coaching out there that a new personal trainer like online could buy
Oh, there's tons.
and like how to get clients when you're training at a big box store, right?
Stuff for content or whatever, you know, and I'm sure it's very similar even in like real estate where like you see these realtors who are on Instagram with all this content and they're probably idiots, but
Yeah.
you would think that they're doing way better than you and maybe financially they are doing better than you even though they know less than you. They're somehow presenting themselves in a way that is giving them more opportunity than you have. Like you can complain about it, but like what are you going to do? Because it's like, it's not going to change. The only thing that you can do is figure out a way to bridge the gap between what you know and how to tell people what you know. This person, for whatever reason, they're doing better than you. It's probably because they're more personal or they're personable and there's something more likable about them. They just do a better job of presenting themselves than you do, regardless of what you know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it should.
exactly.
And we run into the same problem again with Instagram. You know, a lot of people want to complain about all of these more like fitness influencers who do a lot of online coaching, probably have no idea what they're talking about, but they got their huge muscles or big butts or whatever. So, you know, they have a large follower count and you get frustrated because you feel like you should have a bigger following count because you know more than that person. It's like, it sucks, but like, what are you going to do?
The only way to, I guess, overcome it is to start going through the process.
Yeah,
Doing
get yourself
the posting,
big butt.
right? Yeah, get yourself a big
BBL.
get the big muscles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, and with real estate, I find sometimes it's also a bit different though, because like so I don't know too many realtors that do a ton of business off social media. I'm sure there are some, like you said, but I actually find the more active ones are the ones that maybe don't do as much. Like, it's guys that I see that, or girls too, that aren't as active. They're out there killing it.
Yeah.
And but you're right. I'm sure they do get clients, right? And they have a lower, skill set, but it's marketing, right? Like, there's two, like, marketing and sales is different. Sales is what you do when you get them in the door. Marketing is just to get them in the door. And that's, a lot of people fall short on the marketing aspect. How do they get people in the door? Right. It's like two different skill sets. Yeah. What made you go to comedy from this? And first off, comedy is like one of the hardest things.
People say that, but like, I don't know.
You don't find it hard?
I don't know. I sound like maybe a pompous or whatever saying this. Like, I just don't. I don't find going on stage hard. Like, I find comedy and like writing jokes and things like that is very hard. But like, going up there is. I mean, I say that I get pretty nervous before I go up there, depending on like what show it is that I'm doing or whatever. But the way that it started out actually was kind of. I can't exactly remember the timeline of it. I've been doing comedy for in April of 2025. It will be 2 years. I was looking for ways, and I had been looking for a while for ways to just kind of get better at content, like being more presentable, being able to speak better and stuff. So I was looking at things like Toastmasters. You know what Toastmasters is?
Yeah.
At the time, if Toastmasters wasn't online only at the time, I probably would have ended up doing Toastmasters, and this whole thing maybe not have even ever happened. But it was like Zoom calls only, which just wasn't interesting to me at all. I wanted to go to
Almost defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do, right? Trying to get the skill sets to get up and talk.
So I was looking at that. I was looking for like improv classes, and then I honestly don't even remember how I came across they were doing comedy workshop, and they still do it at Levity Comedy Club in Jackson Square downtown. So it was a 6-week comedy workshop, and you would go there every Tuesday night for 2 hours. Every week you were expected to write like another minute of your set. So you would go there, and for the first like hour or whatever, they would have some kind of joke writing exercise, teach you how to write, or we would do like writing sessions where you would kind of bring forward what you had been working on and sit in a circle with everybody else, and they kind of give you feedback. You bounce ideas off each other, help each other write. And then for the last hour, everybody goes up and does their set to whatever extent it was. If it was week 2, everybody had 2 minutes. At week 3, everybody had 3 minutes, until you work your way up to you have a full 5-minute set. They do at the end, it's called a grad show in week 6. So it's an actual comedy show. They sell tickets, and it always sells out. So that was really, really cool. So I went there with, 5 minutes. And I should also say, like, during that time was when I really got connected with a local comedian named Eric Johnston. He's helped me a lot. He's like a mentor to me at now, still very much a mentor to me, but he invites me to open for him sometimes and stuff. So I actually get paid to do comedy, which is pretty crazy for having not been doing it for that long.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky that way. But the grad show was an amazing experience, and I guess that's how I was like, I could see myself doing this more often, because they really put you in a room full of people, like 110 people, and it's very cool because everybody who is coming there, they know what they're coming there to see. They know they're coming there to see a bunch of people who have never done comedy before do it for the first time, so they know what to expect. So you're getting laughs like no matter what, and that's why I always say to people who are like, I'd really like to do that, I say, go do the Levity workshop, because if all you ever want is to just go do stand-up comedy in front of a room full of people and have them laugh at what you say, that is what you will get.
That's the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that seems like a good one. Sold out show too, because I went to one. I don't know if it was Levity yet, because when did they become Levity?
I actually don't know.
Yeah,
I think it was something before that, and then before that it was Yuck Yucks.
Yuck Yucks. I think I went when it was Yuck Yucks or something, and it was it was like an open mic night, and you're right, there wasn't a lot of people there, and then there was a lot of like masturbation jokes. I felt like
That's what
with
you
these
get
guys.
when you go to like an amateur like amateur night, and like I really enjoy going to amateur night at Levity because that's amateur night is like a book. We would call it a booked show. Like you
Yeah.
can't just show up at amateur night and get on. That would be an open mic. So there's a lot of like open mics at local bars and things like that, which is usually you go to that. It's just like the bar flies and like the comedians that are there to go on. It's tough sometimes to get laughs and stuff. So it's hard to tell if your stuff is good or not. Um, Amateur night is when you can actually go up there in front of a room. It's not always going to be a packed room of 100 people or whatever, but it's usually like 40, 50 people. So you get feedback on your jokes. Like if your jokes are funny, you'll know at amateur night. And so, yeah, it's been about 2 years now. I do amateur night at Levity like every 6 weeks or so. And then if Eric's on tour or whatever, usually he'll have me on some of his local shows. So we've got some stuff coming up in January, which is exciting.
Nice. I gotta come to one of the amateur nights down there.
Yeah, come out.
'Cause I love comedy shows. I gotta come to one. I'll come to one of yours, and then if Eric's doing something in Hamilton, I'll come to it too because
We are in St. Catharines, January 26th. Actually, at this really cool venue. It's like a film studio.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
I can't remember what it's called. I wish I could. It'd be valuable. January 26th in St. Catharines. I usually, like, if I have a bunch of dates and stuff like that, I'll post them up on my Instagram. So if anybody does want to come, they can check that out. But it's January 26th in St. Catharines, and then I believe it's February 1st. We're at this place called Burlington Brewery. Have you ever heard of it?
I haven't. No.
So Burlington Brewery is in like Appleby Line area somewhere in Burlington. It's actually a really cool spot. Amazing Mexican food, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, but we're doing a show there as well. So that'll be fun. It's nice to have some dates coming up.
Yeah, you gotta come to the Burlington one. So the St. Catharines one, but it's fun. And like Eric, the first time I met him, I went to like an RBC event, and they had actually hired him to come in and do comedy. So it was him. He was funny, and then I started talking to him, and then we had the wrestling thing in common because his dad was a wrestler. I think his dad wrestled in WWF back in the day, or was it WCW or something?
WCW.
WCW, yeah. The Bull, was it the Bull?
Yep.
Yeah. So he was. So we started talking. Then I know he shot down at Rip's old studio for the wrestling thing. That's interesting. And the stand-up like I think getting in front of a crowd like that, like comedy, it probably also improves other aspects of your business too, because now you get so used to that talking. Like for me, wrestling changed a lot about my comfort level on camera and stuff, because you're going into a room of like 400 people and nothing but your underwear basically, right?
Yep.
And then you're hoping to put on like a good show.
Put on a good show, yeah.
Right. So maybe that's why you don't find comedy transition is hard. You'd already done some
I guess so. And
stuff
then
in front of crowds.
the cool thing too about comedy is like it's less so now, but I still do have a lot of jokes about fitness and stuff like that. So like if my sets are recorded, then that's content for social media as well. I have a lot of jokes that are like about my kids and things like that I don't really post and probably shouldn't. But all the fitness stuff is fair game for content, right? And it actually makes for kind of a unique thing that I have that a lot of other personal trainers don't. There's not a lot of personal trainers that are comedians as well. So that's been pretty cool as well.
Yeah, you've been putting a lot of content out lately. I've been noticing that. That's something you're trying.
It's hard to find time to film new content. I'm lucky, or I don't know, I guess I could say like I'm fortunate to have the skill set where I've been making like pretty good quality content for a while, so I can recycle content and it's still like pretty good by most standards. Like I use a high quality camera and things like that. So some of the things that I've been posting lately, especially the video stuff, is recycled content, but I can always like rework that footage and make new content and things like that. But it's been hard to find the time to put out or make some new stuff, but I'm going to get back into that.
Yeah.
Especially with the New Year's, everybody's going to be looking for tips and things like that in the new year. So
yeah, you got to allocate the time. And then scheduling software has been huge for me. Like I got clips on Instagram now scheduled all the way out until April of next year.
Wow.
So it's just we do it that way. Like you're talking about the professional cameras, we're talking into 2 iPhones here.
High quality
right?
phones.
That's a Pro Max, 15 Pro Max, and then the 13 Pro Max.
13, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
they're
4K is 4K.
4K, 30 FPS. I actually bought that one. I don't even use it. Sits in this drawer in my desk, and I just use it for this. So hopefully the government lets me write that one off. That'll be my next topic, right?
It would, because you can use it for live streaming stuff too. Like,
Yeah,
if you
that's
want to
true.
live stream on Instagram and TikTok or YouTube at the same time, like you can do that. You have 2 phones. Yeah.
I feel like we got to throw the disclaimer. This is not tax advice. So you can talk to a
Social media
professional.
is. I'm sure you can write off both phones for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's but you're right, content's become so important in any business now, and as much as you hate social media, I think you just gotta suck it up and do it, right? Because it's
For sure.
how people are gonna find you moving forward. It's just such a huge aspect.
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, I think some people stress out a little bit too much about it and they kind of like force it, and maybe the content that they put out isn't good. I think you should try to have quality over quantity
Mhm.
to a certain extent. If the population that you serve is mostly local, I don't think that content is as important as maybe some people think they do or
Mhm.
think it is.
That's a great point.
Like especially for me, like as much as it would be cool to be some like renowned Instagram online coach, that's just I have a pretty good reputation in Hamilton, and sometimes I have to remind myself that it's probably best to just like double down on that and serve the local population. Obviously, if opportunities come to train people who live outside the city or whatever, I have the ability to do that through my business. But focusing on Hamilton mostly, I think, is probably the best bet for me. And I enjoy making content, so I'll continue to do that. But I think that there's a lot of coaches that don't enjoy making content. They kind of force themselves to do it,
Mhm.
thinking that for whatever reason they need to. Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously, it's important to have a presence on social media because that's how a lot of people find you. But I actually have probably people who reach out to me for in-person training. I would say for the most part, they just Googled personal trainer Hamilton
Mhm.
and they're like, your name came up. Or if you Google personal trainer Binbrook, I think I'm like the only one. So it
Yeah.
comes up. They're like, I found you on Google. I'm like, cool. Like I didn't
But
do any kind of like SEO or anything like
yeah.
that. I think maybe I
Up.
did a little couple little things a couple years ago to boost it a little bit, but I think I'm like the only one who has their website just like optimized just enough so that when you Google personal trainer Binbrook, I'm the guy who comes up. So that
That's
is
such a
still how people look for things, right? At the end of the day, especially in-person services, they want to see reviews. I've got enough reviews up there for somebody to get enough evidence that they should reach out, and then that's it. Like it's pretty funny. It's a good reminder when somebody reaches out and they found you like that and they don't even follow you on Instagram. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I have like whatever, almost 10,000 followers on Instagram. So it's funny when somebody reaches out to me for personal training and they don't even follow me. I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, you don't.
How did you hear about it?
Literally everything that you would ever need to know about me is on my Instagram page. Like me and how I do my job and everything. It's all there, and you are reaching out and you haven't even seen that. Okay.
Yeah. That's a good point about the geographical part, right? Because it's such a smaller audience, and then also the Google one is big. Like, I'm on a warpath right now to try to get 100 Google reviews. That's
Okay.
my goal right now, just to try to get, because I heard from other people that have done it that once you get 100, it starts to help more. But when you're local, you're right, because social media, it's hard to really narrow in. Like, even YouTube stuff, it's hard. Like, how big is the audience that you're talking to,
Yep.
right? And if you're something hyper geographical, like you are, and like my business
Yeah.
is too, right? Putting a lot of that effort into social media to try to get like 15, 20,000 followers. You got like people from Florida follow. Like,
Yep.
what does it matter? It doesn't actually help your business. I think it just kind of helps your
Yeah.
a little bit more like
It does. It helps
feel, yeah,
your
right.
ego. Like it's very hard, I find, on Instagram to like reach the local population. Like as much as you want to like hone in your hashtags and your geotags and all that stuff, like a lot of people are not going to see it unless you are paying to boost locally to a very specific population of people. It's just really hard locally. I think Facebook is probably the best bet. And I used to be like, I guess my ego used to be a little bit bigger where I would never think about like going into Facebook groups and like pushing my business and stuff like that. But like really there's no reason to not
Hmm.
do that. You know what I mean? And I have to remind myself sometimes. But some people will go on like the local Facebook group and they'll be like, oh, small business Saturday, promote your business. Like there's no other personal trainers that are in there pushing their business. So like why not? I have a note in my phone that's just copy and paste with like my Google link, my website link, my Instagram link. I copy, paste it with a picture.
Yeah. I mean,
Boom, done.
you're able to do it, right? Because I think a lot of people
Five
get
seconds.
scared.
It takes 5 seconds. And if one person hires me off of that, the return on investment is insane.
Huge. Yeah.
Insane.
I think people get scared or just maybe
I think people get
insecure. Like, you think it's lame?
even like no, I don't think
Yeah.
I don't
But
think
you
it's
think
lame.
people
A
think
lot of
it's
people
lame.
think it's lame. Like they think they're above promoting themselves on something like that, but it's like it's free.
Yeah.
Even Instagram at the end of the day,
It's free.
it's free to use, and I think and that's too. It bothers me when people get really upset about the algorithm and things like that. Like I understand that you're stressed out about the way the algorithm is working, but this is a free
Hmm.
platform. So even if 200 people are watching your reel. Like, imagine you're sitting in a room and there was 200 people listening to what you have to say.
Yeah.
I don't think that you would be upset. You know what
No.
I mean?
I had to think about that when I first started doing my YouTube videos. Like
Yeah.
when I first started 3 years ago, I get like maybe 60, 70 views. And then I was like, okay, but if I was talking about this in front of 70 people right now,
Yeah.
I'd be pumped about it. Like this would be a
For sure.
huge deal. I'd probably even be nervous to get up and talk to these,
Mhm.
right? So you're right. It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, or like back in the day, like people would put ads on Kijiji. I don't even know if Kijiji is still a thing, but it's like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
The amount of effort that it takes you to
Like
put
you
it
said,
out
it's
there. And
free.
again, if one person reaches out, it is even if they only buy one session from you, you're gonna tell me that that 2 minutes that it took you to put that ad together wasn't worth the $80 to $100 that you're gonna make for one session off that person.
Yeah. Because back in the day, what were your options? Like newspaper, phone book, like it was all print stuff.
Yeah, and it's
Right.
all an opportunity to get better at promoting yourself. You know, if you tweak your ad a little bit every single time, like every single time you do that, it's just repetition.
Yeah.
Repetition. It's the same thing with video, and that's something that I need to remind myself too when I like get out of the habit of making content and things like that. It's like, why not just record it? Like, even if you have the time right now to record something, why not just record it? Even if you don't, if you go to edit it and you don't end up using it or whatever, like at least you have those reps in. And if you were not doing that in that time, you probably would have been doing something less productive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've gotten really serious about time blocking my mornings out, so I'm like pretty much impenetrable for appointments in the morning. I don't see any clients in the morning. It's my first hour of the day is very regimented. In terms of my reach outs for work, I also have like a whole routine before work, like journaling and exercise and that. But yeah, like I actually set aside time for filming this, right? Like you can only come in to do this at one time a week with me, right? Like
Yeah.
when you were booking, you see it's only Wednesdays. But then even the editing, I have it blocked. Like, okay, this I have an hour and a half. I'm not doing anything but doing the editing and getting everything organized and posted to where it needs to be posted.
Yeah.
That's an hour and a half a week. Like that's very manageable when you think about how many hours people put into stuff or you're putting into your business.
Yeah.
And potentially, like I just look at it like another form of prospecting in a way, right? Like if 100 people watch it, it's like I spent that hour and a half picking up the phone and talking to 100 people.
Yep.
Right. That's a good form of doing it. I know we're getting close. We're running out of time here. Because we're at 47 minutes.
Oh, cool.
Might be a little bit.
Yapping.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Yeah,
This is
so-
awesome. When I first started doing this, I was like, oh, maybe we'll talk for 20 minutes. But then I find the more I talk to people, like there's so many interesting stories,
Yeah.
right? So I love asking this question because I hear it on pretty much every single podcast that I've ever listened to. If you could go back and tell little Barry something, what would you tell yourself?
Like
Looking
how
at
far
it from
back?
now, let's say when you were first starting into your personal training journey, what is some advice you would give yourself or something you would say to yourself from the experiences that you have now?
Learn sales.
Learn sales.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that important.
The hardest part of my job, for sure. And I'm not even saying it's like the hardest part of every personal trainer's job. It's just because it's not something that I took seriously, like when I should have. You know what I mean? Like getting better at those, like sit down consults and all that stuff. Again, it was something where I just didn't really take advantage of the opportunity in front of me when I was working at a big box gym and they were making me do these consults all the time. And I didn't take it seriously. I had enough clients to kind of get by, and if if the people coming in for the consults ended up buying personal training, hey, that's great. But I didn't have any kind of like sales skills. It felt really like grimy to me at the time. I think maybe that's because my boss was kind of grimy. So he would do it in a very grimy way. And I was like, I don't like the way that you're doing that. And so we'd be selling personal training to people that like really couldn't afford it, things like that. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But if I had taken it more seriously, like getting better at just not necessarily sales, but selling myself, you know what I mean? If you're good at what you do, there's nothing wrong with selling yourself. Like you have, especially for me, like I know that I have the skill set to help a person. And so it's almost like I would be doing them a disservice by not convincing them to work with me in a lot of cases.
It's true. And that's kind of the mentality you have to have. And I think you almost have to have a little bit of experience and success to get to that point, right? Then you start to realize to yourself, like, you know what, I'm capable of this, because imposter syndrome is a real thing where you might even be worried to sell.
Get it.
Yeah. You're worried about it. Yeah. Who doesn't, right? And it's, you think, yeah, you're just not worthy of the business or something. But then once you start to realize, like when you know you're intentionally doing good work, you're trying hard and you can deliver the results, then you're right. There's absolutely nothing wrong with going out there and pushing yourself. And sales is so huge for any business. I think it's the number one reason that any single business fails is just lack of that ability to sell.
Yep.
Right. With the big box, I guess it's good because even if you weren't converting, like you kept getting probably a lot of new leads.
Yeah, there
right?
are always going to be leads coming in, but then like if you're not doing a good job, like how many of those leads are you burning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're just burning through them, especially if they're coming through and the consult doesn't go well and they're talking to somebody else and somebody else hears that you're not good or you rub them the wrong way. It's just like you have nothing to lose by just like going all in on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm lucky enough now that like I have my own business, so like most of the people that come to me are hot leads. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So they're already like interested. Whereas if I would have just taken the time to get a little bit better at working with those people who were literally just sitting down for a consultation because they had to as part of the membership
Yeah.
process, you know what I mean? Cold leads. I'd probably be a lot better at sales now than I am.
Yeah. That was one of my least favorite parts every time I joined. I've only ever joined 2 gyms in my life, but it was both times. It was the personal training, those mandatory consults. And I remember the first time
Check
ever.
your toes and all that stuff, tell you everything that's wrong with you.
I was younger and it was I remember I got one and it was that I'm not gonna actually I won't say what gym it was, but it was a guy that was like in just awful shape. And I remember thinking, why would I ever hire like you look like you don't know what you're talking about? And I feel like that's something also important in your industry, right? Like you're in good shape and that helps because
There's a
people
lot of debate about around that
So,
right
yeah.
now on the social media and stuff like that. Is like, should personal trainers be out of shape and stuff like that? I mean, I think you should look like you take care of yourself for
Yeah.
sure. But I think it's also important to recognize that even if somebody is overweight, like you don't know where they started.
It's
So
true.
you could
That's
have
a good point.
you
Yeah.
could be talking to somebody who weighs 250 pounds, but maybe they weighed 350 pounds the year before that.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be, I mean, maybe just don't write the person off. You know what I mean? You'll gather a lot of information from like listening to them talk. If you sit down for a consultation with them or whatever, you'll get an understanding of whether or not they know what they're talking about. And if they know what they're talking about and they're demonstrating that they can help you, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Um, Obviously, it's a little bit harder to make a first impression if you are out of shape by most standards, but you just really never know where people are coming from. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important to keep an open mind that way.
So true. That's something I'm trying to improve on moving forward into 2025. I felt like the biggest piece of crap like 2 weeks ago. I was doing some work for the Children's Fund, which is run by like our Hamilton Rotary, and we're doing a toy drive at Lime Ridge Mall with the radio stations. I remember this like lady came up and she was all tatted up and looked like, somebody rough around the edges. I remember thinking, oh, here we go. And she was like, oh, you guys giving stuff away? And the lady at the table was like, no, we're collecting donations. And she was like, oh, and she reached into her pocket and pulled out $20 and like put it in the donation thing. And I was like, why do I do this? I'm thinking like, it's just, I've been trying to work on it over the last couple of months. And in the 20, it's like I think one of my biggest weaknesses is I get that initial snap judgment.
Guilty
I'm
of it
trying to
too.
get used to giving people like more grace and extending. So that's a good reminder.
I think too, like part of that is there's like never been more ways. Like obviously, there's a lot of people who are struggling financially, but there's really never been more ways to make money.
Mhm.
So, first impression of a person, visually they could look like maybe not, but you don't know how people make money,
Mhm.
appropriately or inappropriately, right?
Yeah. Yeah. These days, right? Well, that's it. Well, that was awesome. This has been really good.
Yeah, it was a good
I
chat.
appreciate you coming in.
No
We
problem.
do something again like this down the road. I'm definitely going to make it out to one of your comedy nights. So everybody else, I encourage you to check out Barry's Instagram. All his links are going to be in the description below. You can go to one of his comedy shows or reach out to him for some personal training. Barry, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a great chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody else, we'll talk to you again next week.